Hi, a very good morning to you for a Saturday episode of News Behind the News. This is Anand Bhaskar from BKBB, acronym for Bhaskar Ki Business Baatein. This is a channel that comes to you every week with policy analysis, conversations, and occasional business stories. But right now, on a Saturday morning, we have News Behind the News. And incidentally, because it's Saturday, do watch our latest podcast on food safety regulations and ratings on the FSSAI. It's a scandalous development. Do watch the podcast. And today, my co-anchors are Husaina, Saloni, Janvi. Welcome all of you. And Katya, welcome. The three of the first three co-anchors will talk about three news stories, and then Katya and I will discuss the implications of some of the stories. Okay, these stories have been selected because they're very important for us and for the country. Let's begin the first story with Husaina. Husaina, can you come in?
47th ASEAN Summit concluded. And to give context, ASEAN is Association of Southeast Asian Nations, which is a regional bloc of 10 countries: Brunei, Cambodia, Indonesia, Laos, Malaysia, Myanmar, the Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam. And India, with ASEAN nations, signed a bilateral free trade agreement to foster trade that came into effect in 2010. However, 15 years later, the numbers show it hasn't really worked in India's favor. Since the pact came into effect, India's exports to ASEAN have risen modestly to about $8.9 billion, while imports have surged to $11.7 billion in 2023-24. And the result is a growing trade deficit which has widened significantly since 2010. Now, also so between 2010 and 2023, trade between India and ASEAN jumped from $43 billion to $131 billion. But again, India's share of exports in that trade has remained significantly low. In fact, India's imports from ASEAN nations have grown faster, which I think is driven mainly by vegetable oil, coal, base metals, and electronic goods. For instance, 37% of India's coal imports came from Indonesia, 21.6% of vegetable oils from Malaysia, and 14.8% from Singapore. Meanwhile, India's top exports to ASEAN, which is petroleum products, machinery, and chemicals, essentially all raw products, have faced tough competition because of the non tariff barriers. And many Indian industries, particularly in steel, agriculture, and electronics, have again found it difficult to compete with ASEAN producers who enjoy greater efficiencies and subsidies. And over 50% of India's imports from ASEAN are raw materials, whereas ASEAN imports from India are mostly finished goods, reflecting again an imbalance in value addition. And again, the situation is made worse by tariff asymmetry. India has reduced tariffs on nearly 80% of its traded goods under the pact. But key ASEAN members like Vietnam and Indonesia, they offered far fewer concessions, which I think was around 50% to 74% of the items that India liberalized. This uneven excess has tilted the agreement heavily in ASEAN's favor. And again, of course, there is the dragon looming. ASEAN's trade with China crossed $850 billion in 2023, making Beijing its largest trading partner. And I think this is not very good for India. And many ASEAN economies are now more tightly integrated with Chinese supply chains, which has further reduced India's competitiveness in the region. In short, while ASEAN nations have benefited from easier access to the Indian market, India has struggled to secure reciprocal gains. Also, because of US trade policies, it has become imperative for India now to diversify its exports markets. And ASEAN is one such market, but it's not able to do so. So, what is your take on this?
ASEAN is a place where India should be there, but India has not benefited from it. It's not benefited, according to me, for two reasons. First, our ministers have been disdainful about ASEAN. The Commerce Minister, Piyush Goyal, categorically stated that ASEAN is the B team for China. It's a large market. The largest growth in populations in Malaysia and Indonesia. How many times has Piyush Goyal gone there? And is insane. But he's gone more often to UK, to EU, to USA. He has not tried to diversify trade away from these Western countries to the neighborhood. It's only now, about a month ago, that NITI Aayog said the need is to look at the neighborhood for trade opportunities. There's a second reason. And the second reason is don't try to sell what you already have. Try to find out what is it the market wants and start producing that. The job of a government is to educate industry about what can be sold in Eastern markets. It's the same thing that India faces with Russia. Russia imports from everyone else, but does not import from India because India does not produce the goods that Russia wants. India has to learn to be proactive and see what the market wants and then develop that. Lastly, because the prime minister was not there, it's advantage China. China's got the most concessional tariffs now with Trump, and India will have to pay a higher tariff. So effectively, ASEAN is going to be important for India, but India will have to find a way to make itself more meaningful to the ASEAN region, especially to the South Asian markets. That is where the growth is. That is where the consumers are. Anyway, let's see what happens. Katya, do you have anything to say on this matter?
Little bit of data, sir. Indonesia and Malaysia have the highest growing e-commerce markets, which means the consumption market is exploding in some way, very similar to India for 5 years back. So that is a market one should look at. And India has a lot of consumer goods which it can use it. Like, recently Japan has come up with a curry version, Indian curry version of a packaged version of it. These kind of innovations are being done outside India, based on Indian cultural products. So I think we should step up a little.
Thanks. And that takes us to the second story, which is equally very important, and that is loans against silver. How good is it? How easy is it to get the loans? Saloni, can you come in?
Yes, sir. Sir, so the RBI has issued guidelines for lending practices in gold and silver loans for banks and non-banking financial companies, NBFCs. So silver will be accepted now as collateral for loans like gold. So the first rule that RBI guidelines includes is that first is a smaller loan to value. Loan to value is short form for LTV. Smaller loan to value for smaller loans. So borrowers can now obtain up to 85% of the gold value as a loan and increase from 75%. This LTV cap applies to total loan amounts up to rupees 2.5 lakh including interest. For example, if the gold is worth rupees 1 lakh, so the borrower can now borrow up to rupees 85,000. Second is 12-month limit for bullet repayment loans. Bullet repayment loans where interest and principal are paid together at the end must now be repaid within 12 months. Third is limits on gold and silver are pledged. So now borrowers can pledge gold ornaments up to 1 kg, gold coins up to 50 grams, silver ornaments up to 10 kg, and silver coins up to 500 grams. These limits apply per borrower across all lender branches. Fourth is faster return of pledged items. So lenders must return pledged gold or silver on the same day the loan is closed or within 7 working days. If delayed, they must pay rupees 5,000 per day in compensation to the borrower. Fifth is mandatory compensation for loss or damage. So, if pledged gold or silver is lost or damaged during audits or handling, lenders must fully compensate borrowers. Then comes the transparent auction process. So, in case of loan defaults, lenders must issue proper notice before auctioning gold. The reserve price must be at least 90% of the market value and 85% after two failed auctions. Any surplus from the auction must be returned to the borrower within 7 working days. And the last one is clear communication in the local language. All loan terms and valuation details must be provided in the borrower's preferred or regional language. For illiterate borrowers, these details must be shared in the presence of an independent witness. What's your take on this, sir?
Well, I have my views, but let's see Katya. She's been working with silver for some time. Katya, come in.
It's a very interesting one, sir. So, like we always talk about how there's a lot of latent gold backed wealth in India. A lot of people also hold a lot of silver, silver plates, glasses, etc., which is passed on through generations. So, a lot of latent silver bullion wealth exists in India. This is one way of utilizing it. So, if you have silver at home, you don't want to sell it, you can always pledge it and take a loan. But there is a little bit of catch here, not from the borrower's perspective, but from the bank's perspective. The value of silver is very volatile. The reason why we accept gold as collateral, some countries are even accepting gold as currency, is because gold's value holds. But that's not the truth with silver. The truth with silver is silver, it's actually nicknamed the devil's metal. It can go up really, really high, it can come crash, and there are a lot of elements which are managing it. So there is, a lot of people have lost money in silver also. And unfortunately, currently, we are in the silver high. Even though it's dropped a little in the last few weeks, over this year, it's gone from 2025, it has gone up 50%. So everybody is expecting a crash. It might not crash, but in such particular things, of like if for 80% of the value, for example, I pledge 1 kilo of silver and I get 80% of its values. What if the value of the silver crashes and I refuse to pay? Because I do not have to pay back. So it actually increases the risk value of banks. Banks are already sitting on huge risks. So the net risk of such loans is going to, imbalance it out. So how do you think you can handle it, sir?
Well, the markets are crazy. How to handle it is also going to be tricky. But I'm still perplexed. Why has RBI put a limit on mortgaging? If a man wants to eat 5 kilos of gold or 5 kilos of silver, so long as the gold and silver is genuine, it should be
Hmm.
taken. I
I
don't
think for
know.
this risk value issue, sir, I don't think they'd want to hold so much silver whose value might not crash, might not crash. They don't want to, they have to show it in the books. So they don't want to show this liabilities in the books. It might become a liability one particular
Yeah,
day.
so
So,
the man effectively not mortgaging it will sell it. He will not mortgage it.
right.
There's no limit on sales.
There's
Anyway,
no limit
thanks.
on it.
Thanks, Katya. Let's go to the third story. And the third story is infrastructure. The government talks of Viksit Bharat. Where is it? Janvi, could you come in?
Yes. So just about a month ago in Bihar, in Nitish Kumar's own district, Nalanda, you had a railway bridge under construction that collapsed, leading to six workers getting injured and two very critically. And this happened at a time when Bihar has been gearing up for elections. And this is not an isolated case because there have been many bridge collapses and 27 bridges collapsed in just the past 3 years. And this is not just in Bihar, but we also have been witnessing more and more of such cases in the past few years, even in states like Gujarat. So when under construction projects fail like this, it shows that the government is just trying to build fast without giving much emphasis to durability. And infrastructure is, of course, the most important one of the most important aspects for any nation. And when infra projects fail, it causes risks for investors as well, both public and private. And then, of course, you have the people. The local residents here also attributed the collapse to poor construction quality and poor management. And the Congress has highlighted these failures in their rallies as well. So instances like this, especially at this time, is also bound to have an impact on the elections as well. So yeah, what do you think about that, sir?
Right. Infrastructure in Bihar has been terrible. Look at the chart that we have compiled. From available data, we know that bridges have been collapsing in several states. And of the states, the top five collapses have taken place in BJP ruled states. Effectively, the government, which talks of better governance, has actually collapsed governance. Look at the second chart. It talks of airports which were inaugurated in Uttar Pradesh and they're closed down now. When you spend money and the bridges collapse, it means that the money has not been spent wisely. When people are not prosecuted, it means that Somehow that money has been allowed to fritter away and the taxpayer has to pay the difference. Each time the taxpayer is penalized, while the engineer, the minister in charge, and everyone else goes scot-free. Irresponsibility has become the order of the day, and that is worrisome. And that takes me to the end of today's session. Thanks for watching. But before you go, let me remind you that we have a podcast that you must watch if you want to understand governance, even in terms of food items, how the government is abetting sickness and death. And yes, have a great week ahead. Look forward to seeing you next Saturday. And do tune in every Saturday for News Behind the News. I'm not going to take questions today because you've already overshot our time limit. But do stay tuned in. We'd love you to be here. And yes, please click the subscribe button, click the like button, and tell all your friends about us. Take care. Good luck.